announced a 17.5% increase of the interest rate. And then later on, just about 2 months after, announced an 18% increase on the interest rate. Now, that is from the CBN. If we're going to the commercial banks where people have to go to borrow and loan money for their businesses or personal stuff, you find out that this percentage has increased to about 32% or thereabout, or more or thereabout. Now, I want to look at the impact of this on entrepreneurs, businesses, small scale businesses, and what have you out there. So, and have with me in the studio my regular guest, who has been here on several occasions, Adereti. Emmanuel, you're welcome.
Nice to be here, Judge.
Yes. So first of all, I want to ask now. I know businesses now coming into the year 2023, there has been somehow then away from the COVID-19 of 2020, and then Nigeria went into a particular type of recession, and then came out of recession, and then back into recession again, and then we're out. But with these interest rates up and down, one with what is happening to the around globally, you find out that majority of the countries are either increasing their interest rates or reducing the interest rates. Now, these countries are not Africa. They are not in Africa. They are in Europe and some other countries. What would you say is the impact on businesses, in the country, in Nigeria, for instance?
Well, for one, I'd say that one of the very first things that come, readily to mind is the fact that businesses have to pay more to have access to facilities. And if businesses are having to pay more, to get facilities, these are facilities that they cannot do without, because more than 80 to 85% of your average businessman, still relies on the bank in some way or form, and if you're having to get facilities at this new rates, it means that your cost of funding has skyrocketed. And if your cost of funding is over the roof, then it will trickle down to your selling price, to your selling cost, and all of that. Because one way or the other, you have to be able to recoup enough to pay the bank and to still make some margins. So the person that suffers, that bears the brunt of it at the end of the day is the common man, is the end user of such products. And we keep saying we want to tackle the rate of inflation, I do not see how, increasing lending rates helps to reduce inflation, because for every policy the CBN shuns out, there is a spiral effect. And once you put out a monetary policy, it affects every walk of life. It doesn't matter whether you're an industrialist, it doesn't matter whether you're a small scale farmer. These are policies that have, overbearing and immediate impact, on every business, regardless of shape or size. So because the local manufacturer that needs to, access funding from the bank to be able to manufacture something, let's say put out Adereti textiles and all. Normally you'd buy the materials, say at 100 naira each and all that. Now you're having to borrow money to buy those materials. Now your cost is not just the 100 naira, it is the money you've borrowed, plus the interest that you now have to put on it. And you have to factor these things in when, you're determining the price at which you sell. So it is the average man whose salaries, whose minimum wages you have not increased in a very long time, whose minimum wage is not even sufficient to cater for his immediate needs, whose minimum wage is not even sufficient, to provide 3 square meals a day, that bears the brunt of this. So what happens is that your spending power, as a businessman is greatly reduced. Do you understand? Because whereas you would ordinarily have, say, borrowed 100 million, now you are forced to rather borrow, say, 50 million because you don't want to borrow too much and all of that. Then you have a market share. You have people that rely on you for your product, say 1,000 people that you supply to on a daily basis steadily. Now you can no longer, because of the increase in the rate and the uncertainty that comes with it, because you're not sure if you go ahead and borrow so much, you'll be able to make your money back. So you also reduce, the funding you're demanding and all of that. So there's a reduction in production, generally. And once there's a reduction in production, there's an increase in demand because people want these products. The products are not available. So in addition, to the cost that is already, being added because of the increase in the lending rate, there's also the one that is added by the scarcity. Remember the laws of demand and supply.
Yes, yes.
Do you understand? So it doesn't all go well for the common man. I mean, for that man that is at the very bottom of the ladder.
I want to ask this question now. Majority of countries around the world, like when I read about why the CBN increased their own interest rates, that's the Nigerian Central Bank now, they cited the fact that major economies around the world, due to what is happening globally, economically, with the high inflation raising up its head in so many other places, they had to increase the interest rates to make sure they are able to match the pressure of inflation that is on the economy itself. Do you agree with this fact, or do you agree with the fact that the country, instead of increasing the interest rate, should allow for a better productivity, a better production chain, or rather a better vibrant entrepreneurship, increase levels of power, that's power generation, increase the level of productivity, open borders, and do a whole lot of other things to make sure that people do not feel the heat. So in these two arguments, which of them do you agree with?
First and foremost, I want to say that it is foolishness, okay, to try patterning, your family according to the, family of Mr. A or Mr. B. You're not on the same salary wage. You're not in the same line of business. You don't have the same wherewithal. You're not on the same level academically and otherwise. And so you see, I have a problem with copycatism. And what do I mean by that? The situation where you just look at what is working elsewhere, and simply because this is working in the United States of America, this is working in the Netherlands, you just pick it. Now there are different ingredients, there are different factors, that determine whether a policy is right for you or is wrong for you. Do you understand?
What are these factors?
You cannot say, for instance, you cannot compare yourself. You cannot pattern. You cannot come up with economic policies, that are akin to the ones that are being practiced or being employed in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, they have power round the clock. In the United Kingdom, if there's to be, a shortage of supply for 10, 15 minutes, they are told about a week ahead. That on XYZ deal, because of maintenance, there'll be no power supply for about 5 minutes, for about 10 minutes. In Nigeria, we are used to lack of power supply. So how do you now copy policies, economic policies from such a country? You'll be doing yourself, more harm than good. So policy making is not general. It should be peculiar. You have your peculiarities as a nation. Do you understand? You have what, what is peculiar to certain areas. Do you understand? Your business terrain, what's happening, the areas where you're struggling. And the emphasis should be on helping businesses grow. The emphasis should be on making money accessible, available. Because when funding is easily accessible, when funding is easily available, then businesses are able to grow. Ideas are able to be worked upon. And at the end of the day, the economy, reaps the benefit, because you now have more people, rather than going to seek for the white collar jobs. You have more people coming in to start their own businesses.
I'll come back to you now. Yes, we'll have to go for a very short break now and come back to Mr. Adereti Emmanuel, who is giving us updates on how this impact on small scale businesses and why the interest rate shouldn't be in that double digits figure. Well, we'll go for a very short break and I'll be right back to give you more. Welcome back. You're still onto the economy today, and we are discussing the issue of the interest rate and the impact on the small scale industry. So I still have with me in the studio Adereti Emmanuel discussing this topic. So yes, on the issue of policies. Now, look, you have spoken about policies, at the tail end of your interview, the first half of this interview, that policies are not meant to hamper, not meant to just crush the business, but should help to open up the businesses, that's open up, help other people out there. Now, we have always had issues of the CBN will just come out and reel out one policy, and then sometimes the policies are good, but they are not followed up to the letter. Or sometimes they bring out a policy like the new Naira redesign. I'm sure you know how that went and what is happening. And it seems we are still in that quagmire. And maybe we'll still be in that deep, waters. But then, what is the issue with having policies? Is it the implementation of the policies, or is it the derivation of those policies?
Well, all policies, whether good or bad, require monitoring. All policies, whether good or bad, require, implementation. Okay, all policies, whether good or bad, require proper planning. Okay, if you miss out on any of these ingredients, then there's a problem. Okay, it is only a fool, okay, that sets out to build a house without first counting the cost. Okay, and in the same vein, it is only a foolish man, a foolish, administrator that comes up with a policy without first considering the pros and the cons, without first planning, and doing due diligence, as to what that policy, would achieve and all that, and whether the advantages outweighs the disadvantages or not. Because for every policy there will be a downside, and there will be, of course, a good side to it and all. And in my opinion, there's no upside for the increase in lending rates, especially at a time where Nigeria is struggling on all fronts. There's no respite on any angle. Today I still had to queue for fuel. I mean, this morning I still had to queue for fuel. Spent about 32 minutes or thereabouts at the filling station before getting fuel. Now you have a lot of businesses that are dependent, on diesel, to power their generators, to power their plants. Do you understand? And these are small businesses that now buy diesel at between 700 and 850 naira. In some places, 900 naira per liter.
Which is quite outrageous.
Do you understand? Which is outrageous. Now, you have that to battle with. Sometimes you have to leave your gen on for as much as 12, 14 hours on a daily basis. Do you understand? You have, in fact, I'm aware of certain industrial areas where the only time their power comes on is from 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. Then the question is, okay, who now stays behind till 10 p.m.? So it means that the whole productive hours, you have to use your generator. And then you have that to battle with. There's no power supply. There's no water. You have to have your own borehole and all whatnot. Do you understand? and then you still have to battle, with the requirements for assessing funds, because nobody just gives you facilities on a platter. No matter how good your ideas are, the banks will still tell you you need to provide A, you need to provide B, you need to provide C. Do you understand? And the annoying part of it is that this is not this does not affect just those that are intending to lend. But what this policy does is that even those of you that are owing already, automatically
It affects
it
everybody.
affects you, because going forward, your what's it called, your interest rate for a loan that you borrowed some months ago, a couple of years ago, has skyrocketed. Do you understand? That is something you never envisaged.
I want
That's
to ask.
nothing
I
that
want
was
to
not
ask this
planned.
question. Sorry for cutting you now. Nigeria has an economic team, which I feel is, which I think is led by the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, and this economic team tends to look at the whole thing that is happening within the country. So now we have a CBN governor who also takes some decisions on its own, but then it is passed through the federal government before it is finally, sorted out, or before people start to obey that. And so, what are you trying to say about the economic team? Is it that the economic team is not doing their work, or is it that the CBN is not sensitive enough with the plight of the people?
The economic team of the government, of the federal government, is a political team. Do you understand?
A political
And
team.
that is exactly what it is, nothing more. It's a political team, it's a team of politicians. And we all know how politicians play the game. Do you understand? So that is that on its own. That's a political thing. And it's easy to get things through a political system. It's one of the easiest things to do, because they are short-sighted. They are not looking too far into the future. They are not looking, too down the line. They are interested more in the immediate.
But then what of all these things? They say there's a project, something project 2030 project, this and that. Those are long-term plans. But then, what happens?
The current administration has spent how long in power? About 8 years. And before they came into power, they promised that within 1-2 years, they were going to get Nigeria air running. Okay, we're going to have our own private, our own national carrier and all that. Till date, that is still a dream. Now they've said to us that before the president-elect, in the person of Tinubu, is what's it called, is inaugurated, as the president, that Nigeria will be up and running. But they've also equally put a caveat underneath it to tell you that the only thing that is outstanding is the international certification, blah, 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 blah. This is something that you have had 8 years to get done. Now, that is how politicians operate. Now, Dangote, who is a businessman, came out and said to the world that I'm building a refinery and this is my timeline. Do you understand? This is the timeline. This is what we are looking. So plus or minus this and that. And we all know how that story is going. So if you expect to get something done properly, it doesn't lie on the table of the economic team. Because at the end of the day, okay, for instance, the economic team, like you said, is headed by His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Okay, now that man is a son, is a revered son, a senior advocate of Nigeria, a man I love and respect.
So he's not an economist.
A man I love and respect so much. But then, by the time we get into economic jargons, I'm sure that somewhere along the line, even if he refuses to admit it, it will get lost. Do you understand? He will definitely get lost somewhere along the line. So the problem is not with the economic team, because all you need to do is convince them that you are doing the right thing. Do you understand? I'm the CBN governor. Okay, this is what I feel is the right thing for, and these are my reasons. These are my reasons. It does not have enough data. It does not have enough knowledge at his wherewithal to second guess you or to say no, this is not necessarily good enough. And the same thing as most of the other people on the team. And if there are 1 or 2 people that might suspect, their voices will be outnumbered by the others. Do you understand? So it is actually, the onus is actually on the Ministry of Finance. The onus is actually on the central bank.
So the system is what is at fault here.
You see, we claim to practice a federal system of democracy. I don't know if that is what we actually practice in reality. You know, but the truth of the matter is that I have said it repeatedly on different fora that this past 8 years, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, CBN has continuously and shamelessly goofed.